Welcome to Prepared for Parenthood, the podcast for hopeful, expectant, and new parents with little ones up to age 5. I'm your host, Dr. Stephanie Duger, a psychotherapist, author, educator, parent coach, and married mother of 2. On this show, we'll discuss everything from the most up-to-date practicals of best supporting your young children, to thriving in relationship as a family, to more surprising topics around the psychology and development of babies from conception through age 5. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. I'm thrilled to have you here today. Welcome back to Prepared for Parenthood. Our guest today is Eileen Henry, a Resources for Infant Educators, or RE associate, and a member of the International Association of Child Sleep Consultants. She's a pioneer in the field of child sleep specialists and has helped families across the globe find peaceful sleep for more than 2 decades. Eileen is author of The Compassionate Sleep Solution, Calming the Cry from 2016, which can be found on Amazon, and her sleep program is rooted in RI approach and regulatory theory. So thanks so much for joining us today, Eileen. We're so happy to have you here.
Oh, my pleasure.
We've talked a lot on this particular show about prenatal bonding. You're having those conversations and those interactions with your baby prior to even being born. You know, we're going out to eat now, or we're going to grandma and grandpa's house. Just sharing all those pieces can start that relationship even earlier than birth. So even though you're moving with baby inside of you, it's different than saying, I'm going to put you on the changing table, but it has the similar effect of building the relationship, which I just love.
Yes. And then there's something that happens when we're eye to eye, face to face, and heart to heart with these little ones. And that's where we want to build in those highly present times. And the most important part of the day for modern day families is when we reunite at the end of the day. So I'm real big on ritual. Children understand ritual from such a young age that parents say, oh, we walk into the bedroom at night and our 6-month-old starts to cry. What do we do? And that's where I've found slowing down really helps. To slow down, sit down wherever you are, get present, and look at your child and just acknowledge how intelligent they are. It's bedtime. It's hard to let go of the day because it is. It's like discovering a new planet for these little ones. And then they start to crawl and creativity comes in and wonder and all of those qualities of early childhood, that 0 to 3, where we're changing so much. There's so many qualities there that are just a brilliance, the highest level of curiosity and wonder. How do we integrate that into our children, that they hold on to some of that wonder?
Be beautiful if we could hold on to that our whole lives, I think.
Yeah, I do. I think we do that as a family. Someone will ask a question and we naturally want to reach for the phone to find the answer. It's like, no. Let's not. Let's just wonder. What do you think? And mull it around a bit before we start reaching for the answer. And I think that's a great way to prepare for parenthood. Let yourself not know. We don't have to know everything. It's okay. We can meet them where they are. They're in wonder. We can meet them. And so toddlerhood, I talk to parents a lot about embodied boundaries. I think that's the gift of toddlerhood, that when we offer literally structural boundaries, walls, doors, gates, car seats, what a drag for a child who wants to rock and roll and run around, to have to be strapped into a car seat. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, this is what we got to do to be safe. That's when we're helping our children start to embody some of the physical boundaries. And to send a child out into the world with embodied boundaries is a joy for a parent, and constantly reassuring my parents that. I know boundaries are relentless and they're hard, and your child's going to have a natural reaction to them because they want more freedom than they can handle. They want more control than they can handle. They want that desire again. And we're helping them to embody these boundaries and know where the limit is, because that's the child who's going to keep themselves safe when we're not around. And so that's an important part of toddler sleep.
So important to be able to feel safe in yourself out in the world.
Yes. And like I said earlier, we're at some of the safest times humans have experienced, yet we're struggling from feeling unsafe in the world, from feeling insecure. Children are really struggling with that.
Mm.
Right now, I'm reading a lot about the boy struggle that's happening and helping a lot of parents with young boys. We want to make sure we don't leave them in the dust. We want them to feel strong and empowered. What's healthy masculine? We need to get into that conversation. I'm honored to work with a lot of fathers who are healthy patriarch, healthy masculine, healthy men wanting the best for their families and their children. And they're so involved. We're a lucky generation. I feel that, of having my children's fathers so involved in their lives and their upbringing and their growth and their development.
So notably in your book, Eileen, you talk about sleep as a learned skill. And you say that regression is a necessary and important part of development. Can you say more about that?
Yes, there's so much focus on regressions. And there's a book written about regressions. Regression is something we just do all our lives. My children would be the first to point out when their mother emotionally regresses right in front of them. I prefer focusing on the leap of development in the progress, because we tend to, as humans, follow what we focus on. And if we focus on these natural regressions, what it is, the brain, when it's learning so much, so fast, so new, the brain and the body will go back and pick up what it knows and bring it forward. Now, back to that embodied child, they're doing it physically, emotionally, mentally, probably spiritually, and psychological on every level. So you'll see a toddler who's walking, and then you turn around, they're crawling across the room. They're going back and picking up that skill. I remember looking at my children thinking, I wonder when the last time I'll see them crawl is. They were in grade school, and my son was just crawling across the soccer field, really. Just like, I thought you were way past that. So they go back and pick up a skill and bring it forward. And regression in sleep, because so much is changing, something can look like a regression, but it's just their brain taking a skill that they're learning and practicing during the day, and they start to practice it in the night, and they start crawling around the crib or doing laps, walking around the crib, and not necessarily fully awake. And then they wake up and they're standing in the corner and they naturally cry out because the last thing they remember was falling asleep. And then they're just standing there, or they crawl around and bump their head in the corner of the crib. So some of the regressions that we're focusing on are things that we can just let happen. We don't need to do anything. So I tell parents, there's nothing linear about it. It really is more of a spiral. I like the idea of spiral dynamics, how spiral dynamics approaches development in humans in many categories. It's a wonderful way to look at it. It's way more dynamic than a graph or a chart.
I'd like to talk a little bit about safely co-sleeping. When is the best time frame for parents who choose to safely co-sleep with a baby in their protected area, like a nest in the bed or a bassinet? And when's the best time developmentally to transition that baby to a different space with the most ease for parents who choose to do that? And I know some people choose to co-sleep for a long time, for years, but for those who are finding that maybe they're getting interrupted sleep or they need more space, what might that look like?
So I consider co-sleeping just close proximity. So there's bed sharing and co-sleeping. So an arm's reach co-sleeper or a bassinet or something in the room, you can do that for as long as you want. The American Academy of Pediatrics says to do it for a year. I think if you're creating a safe place, the families who come to me are up to date on safety. That's a discussion we have. They know not to put blankets and gigantic stuffed animals in the crib and that kind of stuff. Bed sharing is easy to make say, a bassinet or a crib in the room. Usually around 7, 8 months, parents start to notice they're waking up the baby more than the baby's waking them up. So if we've worked on sleep while the baby's in the room, and I work with a lot of families in Europe, Scandinavia, they just don't have the luxury of space. Some of those families have been very happy installing Murphy beds in their living rooms, and they just give the child the bedroom. Because when the parent walks in, the child wakes up. As quiet as they can be. Just the proximity of a parent's brain, especially the mother's brain. In proximity of a child brain, I swear there is some kind of telepathic knowing.
And probably wow too. Right?
There's a beautiful book, A General Theory of Love, that was written by 4 MDs, and they call the limbic connection of the mother and the child an almost telepathic bond. So the easiest time to move them, I'd say, is when the parents feel really ready. If there's a bit of apprehension, children can feel that. But I've had mothers who are very confident about moving their 5, 6-month-old into another room. They not only notice that it's easy, but everybody slept better, including the baby. Sleep periods get longer because they're not smelling, sensing, feeling every move, every breath in bed next to each other or even in the room. So toddlerhood is easier than parents think it is because the child's verbal, and the preparation I do with toddlers is really fun. We completely involve the toddler in their transition. And we have a couple of days, depending on the age of the child. For 2-year-olds, a 2-day preparation. For 3-year-olds, a 3-day preparation. For 5-year-olds, the most I go is like 5 days preparation, depending on the child. And parents are really good at knowing, well, my child is slow to transition and slow to warm. Or the parent's like, I'm slow to transition and warm. I need to take this slower. So I have more confidence. So we slow it down and we prepare them, and we do a dress rehearsal, and we do it in the form of play and the child's interests and really involve them in the process. They have their own sleep story, their own lullaby. We really make it beautiful. And children respond to beauty and goodness and connection and intimacy. They love it.
You share some in your book about developing that routine and the sleep environment. What do you think are the most important things? So there's involving the child if they're older. What are some other things to think about with that?
Having enough big body movement before we start to wind down. So when we come together at the end, there's this phenomenon that happens. There's a lot of energy and excitement. So if a child is at daycare or preschool or a caregiver or something, or even if we've been with them all day, we want to make that transition of coming together to sit down and have dinner and then move towards bed. Intimacy, connection, presence. Turn all devices off. For children, really, their devices need to be off by 3 or 4 in the afternoon. We want to make sure to hook up the dopamine from watching screens to something really healthy. Have a dance party, have big body art projects, bicycle riding, go for a walk, do something outdoors if you can. Dinner, I like that to be a really intimate time. I've noticed with my own children and with children over the years that the most likely place our children are going to be disinhibited and start spilling their guts, dinner tables and pillows right before bed. It's pillow talk. Their little heads hit the pillow and we're storytelling. That's why I like storytelling better than book reading in the bedroom. I love book reading, but that's more of an active love, maybe after dinner, before bath, or before we go into the bedroom, but storytelling and something really intimate. Have a creative connection with the child. And when they feel connected, they're disinhibited and they tell us things. We hear it all. What's happening on the playground? What's happening with that teacher? This is older children, of course, but we're building those routines from babies, from how we come together, and they're 2 separate rituals. The family coming together and then coming together as we release them into sleep. I talk a lot with my clients about that liminal space between consciousness and unconsciousness. We want our children to be able to navigate that space confidently and healthily, but we also want them to want to have relationship around them. It's natural they want us to be near them and they don't want to let go. So we're balancing a lot, encouraging, yes, togetherness, and it's time to go to sleep and I have things to do. We're honest with them. I'm not going to sleep now. You are. And most children will feel a sense of someone kind of watching if they can hear us doing the dishes and hear us doing laundry or something. The grown-ups are still up around the house as the child's drifting away. I remember I loved it when I could hear grown-ups in the house as I was going to sleep because I was a terrible sleeper. I was very scared as a child. That probably feeds into my wanting children to feel good about that liminal space. It's a fraught little moment for humans.
We all use this term falling asleep.
Yes.
And you discuss falling more broadly in your book. Can you share what falling is and some of the things parents and caregivers do to either rescue their children from falling or to support them better in doing it?
Yes, the falling asleep. In the beginning, I think it's a kind and necessary thing to do to fix the falling because our newborns haven't integrated. They're reflexive. There are a lot of reflexes. And that moral reflex, we have to calm that because it's happening all the time. So holding and swallowing and keeping them close helps to calm that. And I think it does help to integrate it unless we do it too much. That's why in Rye, we're very devoted to baby floor yoga, just letting them free move and have that moral reflex during the day. And all those herky-jerky movements the infant is doing, every time they move, their brain is organizing. So we want a lot of out of any kind of carriers, just on the floor, on a firm surface, being able to free move. So when we start to see that reflex integration happening, deliberate movements of reaching for a toy and bringing it to their mouths, they're more able to start the learning of falling asleep. But when we rock and nurse and hold and all that stuff to sleep, we're fixing the falling, which I think is fine. We just don't have to do it for as long as we may. I say this in my book. Parents come to me and say, I know I'm doing it wrong. No, you're not doing it wrong. You're just doing it right for longer maybe than you need to, honestly. And so that sensation of falling, every time we take our infant and we lay them down, they get a little bit of that feeling. But what they have to navigate and incorporate into their sleeping repertoire is the feeling we get when sleep takes us. It's being taken. And it can be a beautiful thing unless it can have a little startle associated with it. So I think early on, it's nice while children are in that stage of wonder and able to just be with the self and the thinking mind isn't grabbing us until they get really verbally expressive and things start to move in the shadows and there might be something in the closet or under the bed. That's always an interesting stage. But letting them fall, they're having that experience all day. As soon as they start crawling, they start falling. And when they start standing, they start falling. So the falling becomes just a part of it, and they can have the same experience in sleep if we allow it. So I think while, again, they're so embodied and they're falling anyway, they can have this experience with falling. And that mattress is so reliable. It catches them 100% of the time. So that pretty soon they just relax in. And that's a sweet moment when parents hear a child babbling, cooing, singing, and then they just drift into sleep. And then sometimes they don't. Sometimes they yell at us.
Kind of along that same thread of falling in love, being embodied.
Yeah.
You interestingly bring up sex in your book. Can you speak to the importance of that for parents and how that interacts with sleep, why you brought it into your book, how baby sleeping in a room might play into that or not?
Yes. And that's the first chapter I'm going to rewrite when I rewrite my book. My irreverent humor doesn't always come out that well in the written word. But what I would say about sex is that when did parenting become a verb? Like, when did it become something we actively did? And there was a style of parenting that we ascribed to, and all these beliefs around it, and all of this research around it, and experts around it. It's pretty recent. I mean, I'm a early 60s baby. It was definitely a while into my childhood that there were a lot of books about it, right? There's such a focus on it. And I think it's easy to pull focus away from the intimate couple and put it all on the child. And what that can do to marriages is, as challenging as it is. And now we have partners and husbands and fathers, women, that are really involved in our children's upbringing, way more than it was that men were before in the care and nurturing and raising of the children. And that brings new challenges to the intimate couple in the relationship. So I think it's important to put the couple first at some point. At first, we're putting our children first. We just are. But I think in toddlerhood is when we titrate the bad news. Grown-ups are in charge, and they're going to be in charge for a while. So how are you going to navigate that? Because that is the drag of being a child, that grown-ups are telling you what to do, in charge, kind of running the show for 17, 18 years. And their feelings about that are natural, and they deserve and have every right to have all their feelings about it. And we put the couple first. I think it is important to do. The thing I would change about my book is, in particular, after women give birth, whether it was a cesarean or a vaginal birth, that intimacy changes and sex needs to change with what happens. And I just recommend women find a good pelvic therapist and take care of the pelvis. Western medicine has not done a real great job at helping women keep our vitality and the care and nurturing of the vagina. I will just say it. And once we give birth, anatomically, things happen that change, and there can be pain with intercourse. So when I rewrite that chapter, I'm going to offer more resources on that. And how sex will change with the partner, how intimacy changes. It does. Motherhood naturally changes our sexuality, and then perimenopause and all of that's coming. And we get to stay vibrant, and we get to have a healthy sex life for longer, but we have to take that into our own charge. And women have.
I think that pelvic floor health was so critical, and it's so seldom spoken of, at least in this country. I don't hear it a lot.
Yes, be prepared and know that changes are going to happen, and there's something you can do about it. Painful intercourse isn't something anyone has to live with. So it's really important. And it's quite important for our children to see healthy, intimate relationship with their parents. Yeah.
We've been speaking today with Eileen Henry. She is a pioneer in sleep for babies, infants, young children, and it's been so interesting speaking with you today, Eileen. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing so much different kind of wisdom with us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Take care. Thank you so much for listening to the Prepared for Parenthood podcast today. I hope you found this episode educational, informational, and conversational, and that you'll join me again for another episode soon. If you enjoyed listening to today's podcast, I'd very much appreciate if you would rate, review, and subscribe. If you're interested in more information related to today's podcast, or are looking for parent coaching or courses, you can find my information in the show notes or online at preparedforparenthood.com.